Hey everyone, Ross Marchand here with the Taxpayers Protection Alliance. And I'm sure you're sick about hearing all about COVID in the United States. So joining us with a little bit of an international perspective is Nisa Bahçeli. She is the leader of the 3H movement in Turkey. Nisa, how are you holding up?
Hello, it's been very busy days going on in Turkey, but yeah, we're fine. I'm safe and fine. I'm in my quarantine and it's all good. Yeah.
Okay, so apparently the quarantine is not limited to the United States. See, for everyone listening, for everyone watching this video, Turkey and many other countries are quarantining as well. What is going on in Turkey right now? What's the situation?
Yeah. The first case in Turkey was announced in 10th of March. So we are basically in the 13th, 7th day.
Hmm.
And according to data that the government announced us today, the current situation is we have 74,193 cases
Hmm.
and 1,643 deaths.
Hmm.
And yeah, the government announced the numbers every day, but there is a very intense view that the numbers are not that transparent. It is said that the cause of the most deaths is written differently. Um, the numbers have been announced since the first day, but we didn't know any other data about the pandemic central. We learned later which causes were concentrated and where. Now we know that the center of the pandemic is Istanbul. Unfortunately, we learned this late, but now we know that. And
Hmm.
we have a narrow curfew over 65 years old people and under 20 years old people who are not working. So for the ones below 20 years old, if they work, they can still go out. And we have any other curfew for weekends. The last week we had a curfew for 31 metropolitan city and a small city which were cases very high. And last week they announced the first curfew. The announcement was made 2 hours before the curfew.
Mm.
And according to reports, at least 24,000 people were on the street to get basic food needs. And many fights broke out. People didn't care about the social distance, and there was a panic. The Minister of the Interior resigned last week, and
Wow.
he took over the responsibility. However, President Erdogan didn't accept the resignation. Um,
Hmm.
there was a very shocking news for us. But
Wow.
you know, now he's working. He's continued to work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, and in fact, there is a very different air in Turkey because we
Hmm.
live post-election. We had a post-election news last year. We had a local government election, and the opposition party won most of the metropolitan areas. So the most important areas was Ankara and Istanbul.
Hmm.
And the central government tries to limit the power of the local government with many things. So Ekrem İmamoğlu, the mayor of the Istanbul, said that he was aware of the curfew for the weekends in the last minute with the people. So they didn't say that, okay, we have a curfew this week, blah, blah. No, he just realized that there will be a curfew with
The
us.
last minute, two
In
hours. Come
last
on, let's go.
yeah.
So there's so much
In the other
here.
hand,
Yeah.
uh, we had intercity travel except for essential goods and services is forbidden in Turkey. And our private economy is heavily dominated by the service industries. It's
Hmm.
roughly 60%. So even though there is no national curfew, there is a strict recommendation for everyone to stay at home unless it's very urgent for them to go out. And the reason that we have no national curfew, it's obviously the economic situation in Turkey. Basically, we don't have money for this. So
Right.
the coronavirus was caught in the middle of the two crises. The first crisis is the inability of the managing the state, and the second thing is economic crisis that we have.
Right. And you always see this tendency, whether it's the Turkish government or the US government, keep spending, and when in doubt, guess what? Spend some more. But the other side of that equation is tax policy. And we're seeing in the US the suspension, the delaying of filing and having to pay income taxes. I know income taxes, for example, federal in most states, it is extended until July 15th. And normally we would have had to have paid on April 15th. Is there anything like that going on in Turkey right now in terms of suspending taxation or kicking it down the road?
Yes, there is a package that the government announced us for the first thing. In this package, there was some kind of tax issues. The package was approximately 100 billion liras. It's like $15 billion. But it's not possible to say that the package was sufficient because the ratio of the amount of the package to our income is about 2%. It's very low
Right.
if we compare to the other world. And there was some reduction of VAT on domestic flight tickets and available credit in housing loans, and they postponing the accommodation tax in the first package. But almost all domestic flights were stopped 2 weeks after the package. So this is actually a kind of fiscal policy unpredictability. So and you cannot buy a house when you're at the house. So
Yeah.
they couldn't foresee that we would not able to organize any holiday. But they postponed the accommodation tax. So after that, in last week, we have a new kind of package that passed from the parliament. And according to this package, the layoff is banned for 3 months, and some kind of debts are postponed for 3 months. And the city councils are empowered to postpone their water bills for 3 months. For the tax issue, there was some kind of regulation, but it's obviously not enough. It's obviously it's not a tax issue in Turkey. It's a budget issue, exactly. They said that the advertisement tax, annual advertisement tax, and annual environmental cleaning taxes of the companies whose activities are stopped or cannot be operated are not taken into consideration, which correspond to the periods in which the activities are stopped. So they postpone this kind of taxes, but for the income taxes, for the VAT or luxury tax or sin tax, there is no regulation. And in Turkey, our tax policy is depending on the indirect taxes. So the ratio is like 70% of the taxes are indirect and 30% of this taxes is direct. So in this coronavirus crisis, we obviously cannot spend too much money. We are staying at our homes. So the government's tax income will decrease very, very much. And the budget deficit will be high.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah. So do you think this is a lesson going forward for not only the Turkish government, but also the US government? If you spend a lot before, then you're not going to have a lot of capacity to spend an historic amount of money in a crazy situation like this. What sorts of lessons going forward can policymakers learn?
So I would like to mention about a budget deficit in Turkey. As of today, in the March, the data was announced for 3 months. Data was announced, and when we look at the budget's performance in the first 3 months, it's understood that the collection of tax revenues decreased like 45%, which is very high. And we can see that the corporate accrual rate remains at 50% in corporate tax, while the collection rate of the VAT at the lowest level, it's like 8.9%. So the tax revenue was declined like 10% compared to the same month of the previous year. It was almost 50%. So the budget will be affected negatively. The central government budget deficit is now 25 billion Turkish lira in March.
Wow.
And I'm sorry, the last year it was $25 billion, and now this month it's 44 billion Turkish lira. So it's like doubled in this month, you know. So I can say that there should be there is a need for the regulation of the budget. So the parliament should be together and they should regulate the budget, you know, renew the budget, because it's obviously that wasn't a crisis budget. So if it will be continue like this, we will have very, very big budget deficit, which is not good, you know. Even though the central bank gave the reserve fund to the treasury last year, the central government budget deficit increased 70%, and it was 164 billion Turkish lira. So
I think that this kind of shows the need. When people talk about regulation, normally they're talking about regulation of private industry. But I think now more than ever, it's really important to regulate government, to regulate the budget. Where can we read more about your work and what is happening in Turkey? You have a website for all this information?
Actually, we had, as you know, Tax Research Association in Turkey. I'm a project coordinator of this association. So nowadays we have a new website. We're working on a new website for this kind of data. So our first project was about the taxes, and our second project was about the tax education, and now our third project is about the budget data. So the name's called, it's Take Care of Your Budget. And we will publish our new website in this July. So all of the people from Turkey, they can see this kind of data. Very simple, very understandable, a lot of basic graphics. And I think that would be very good for them, because the active citizenship starts with tax awareness and budget awareness. If you don't know your taxes, you cannot ask for transparency, accountability, you know, and in Turkey, we are living this. People doesn't aware of their taxes, so they don't have any, you know, anything to ask. What can you ask, you know?
Well, yeah, it's important. You guys are living this. We're living in our own weird sort of dystopian nightmare. And it's important to put things in simple terms. Because when you go to budget websites, at least I can speak from experience in the US, it's complicated and you don't even know how to read the data and therefore which questions to ask. So thank you. Keep up the good work and great conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks. I'll talk soon. Take care.